Mr. Chairman, it should be noted that West Irian belongs to the congregation of the Gereja Protestan Maluku, the Indonesian Moluccan Protestant Church, which has always provided the teachers for West Irian and which has its headquarters in Ambon in the eastern part of Indonesia. There is, as you know, complete freedom of religion in Indonesia. On Ambon, an island of 50% Muslim and 50% Christian, the seats of the Gereja Protestan Maluku, a new large Christian church was built some years ago with the subsidy of the central government in Jakarta. The historic link between Maluku and its congregation in West Irian is now forcibly broken by the Dutch authorities by the separation of West Irian from the rest of Indonesia against the religious interests and ties of the Indonesian Christian community in West Irian. Mr. Chairman, among responsible intellectuals, aside from Professor Theo, whom I have already quoted, there is indeed a growing anxiety about the stubbornness and inflexibility of the Netherlands government's position in maintaining its colonial rule over West Irian against all reason and justice in the world. I know, Mr. Chairman, that the Netherlands government may not be able to reverse or modify its official position overnight. But we are not without some hope. The world is progressing forwards, and I'm sure so is the thinking of people. In the recent debate in the Netherlands Parliament affecting the question of West Irian on the 9th of January last, the Netherlands Prime Minister Dr. Drees, while naturally still finding it his duty to justify the official Dutch policy on West Irian, acknowledged happily the importance of the relationship between the West and New Asia and Africa. He said, and I quote, "It is extremely important that the West adopts such an attitude which may create a better understanding between the Western countries and the Asian African countries. This means that the West has to be free from any thought of colonialism," unquote. Mr. Chairman, if indeed the Netherlands government will really be able to free itself from any thought of colonialism, then I am sure that the dispute with Indonesia over West Irian will readily be solved in the most satisfactory way. End of the quotation. Mr. Chairman, these are all encouraging signs of the present possibilities for a solution of this unfortunate dispute. We do not expect a solution overnight. We realize the difficulties which still lie in the way of a speedy solution. But let us not be discouraged by the present impasse. Let us believe in the creation of goodwill among peoples and nations under the guidance of the principles of this great world organization. In this belief, we have come here. Let this organization encourage the possibilities which I have dared mention. We do not expect miracles. Human beings are not perfect, nor is our assembly. However, in taking advantage of these possibilities, no matter how small, lies the path of wisdom in seeking peace and understanding. My delegation will accept in this spirit any resolution of this assembly which, in its wisdom, can positively and effectively render such a contribution. Mr. Chairman, honorable members of this committee, we offer to you most respectfully the knob of the door. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
call upon the distinguished delegate of Netherlands.
Mr. Chairman, as this is the third time that the Indonesian claim to Netherlands New Guinea has been placed on the agenda of this committee, I do not intend to presume on the time and the patience of my fellow members by giving them a lengthy expose of all the geographical, ethnic, historical, legal, and political arguments that may have some bearing on this matter. The Indonesian view was that the transfer of sovereignty should include all territories which had formed part of the Netherlands East Indies. The Netherlands government, on the other hand, felt that it would be unjustifiable to hand over the Netherlands part of the island of New Guinea to the Republic of the United States of Indonesia, because this island, inhabited by Papuans, a people entirely different from Indonesians, and having no racial, no cultural, no religious, and especially no national affinity with them, could not, by any stretch of the imagination, be said to belong to the Indonesian nation. There was therefore a deadlock. But as it was held desirable that the transfer of sovereignty should not be deferred, the parties finally agreed on two things. One, that Netherlands New Guinea would remain under Netherlands sovereignty. And secondly, that the parties would try to find, through negotiations, a settlement concerning the political status of Netherlands New Guinea, and that they would aim at achieving agreement on that point within a year. The reasons why the Netherlands government agreed to this clause, proposed by the United Nations Commission for Indonesia, were twofold. In the first place, the arrangement placed beyond doubt that the Netherlands remained sovereign over Netherlands New Guinea. In the second place, my government was hopeful that within the Netherlands-Indonesian Union, a status might be devised for Netherlands New Guinea, which would safeguard the intrinsic rights of its inhabitants and yet give Indonesia a share in the development of the territory and in the education of its people. Read to the facts. Let me mention first that there was no independence movement in Netherlands New Guinea. New Guinea, during the latter part of the war, was entirely cut off from Indonesia. The main centers of Papuan life were on the Allied side of the front line, while Indonesia was still occupied by Japan. There was not a single Papuan connected with the Indonesian independence movement. And the population of Netherlands New Guinea, most of whom had never even heard of Indonesia, was, in the words of the Indonesian leader, Mr. Muhammad Hatta himself, I quote, with the exception of a very small group incapable of expressing its political will. Mr. Hatta made that statement on the 25th of November 1949. Now, any intention on the part of those who on August the 17th, 1945, proclaimed Indonesian independence to include therein the independence of Netherlands New Guinea could not, under these circumstances, have had any effect, as they had no right whatsoever, either legal or moral, to speak for the inhabitants of Netherlands New Guinea. Of August the 17th, 1945 was as follows. I quote, "Proclamation.